Okay, and we are live. Hello to everyone who is already tuned in. My name is Boris. I'm from Aligned, and today it is my great pleasure to be hosting Tim Clancy, who I have been interacting with a little bit on Twitter and learning from, and is going to be dropping some truth bombs about Ethereum today. And we're going to dive into a bunch of great topics, I think. So, Tim, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Boris. Let me take this off so everyone can actually hear me. Yeah, no, thanks for reaching out. Happy to be here. Always happy to chat about what I'm doing and find other aligned individuals to speak with.
Puns always intended, at least on my end. So just for context, for people who might be tuning in for the first time or anything like that. Oh, I'm just going to share this in Telegram. Yeah, most Wednesdays I get the chance to invite people from across the Ethereum and ZK ecosystems to talk about topics that we care a lot about and hopefully you care a lot about. And I feel like I haven't had anybody who I disagree with heavily yet. So maybe I'll get a chance to play devil's advocate or something, because I think I probably agree with a lot of Tim's opinions. But how about we kick things off? Like, Tim, maybe a bit of background for people who aren't familiar with you or don't know you from Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was mostly an application layer developer from kind of early Ethereum days. I got very active in the space in 2017. Worked around doing a lot of early NFT stuff, and was mostly off the radar until probably 2020 or 2023, right towards the end, actually, after like the last cycle kind of ended in the FTX implosion. Came around, started being more active, meeting other people, talking to people, and it was really, that sort of led into what I'm doing now and discovering Milady and all the fun things that I've been working on, right? And so I spent some of that time. I worked with Remelia a little bit to help them put together some of their infrastructure. I am working on an L2, which is yet another one, but unique among the L2s in that we are really trying to not launch unless we have all of the full theoretical security guarantees that we can get. And I'm honored to be part of the little Silviculture Society for the
Yeah,
Ethereum Foundation to,
nice.
yeah.
Good previews for all the things that I'm dying to ask you about. But actually, so maybe to start, so you said you started off as an application level developer. So within Ethereum specifically, like you were working on smart contracts, apps.
Yeah, so I'd let's see. I think many people in the space kind of got on board around the same time as me, and I'll just share my background, right? So I'm finishing grad school. It's 2017. Everyone knows about ICOs. These things are happening. You're vaguely aware that there's new stuff happening in cryptocurrency that isn't Bitcoin. And then I went and looked at it and I fell in love with the idea of, here's the world global machine, state machine that no one can ever control, no one can ever stop. And yeah, I've been working professionally in Ethereum since then, right? Like, did my thesis about an NFT application for gaming. Actually, my background previously before
Cool.
that had been a few stints at like Electronic Arts and AWS, just like very conventional tech. But yeah, I jumped right out of that, right out of school, and I started working in Ethereum full time.
Awesome. I don't want to talk about myself too much, but I definitely saw some parallels there. I mean, I discovered Ethereum a little bit later. I mean, I heard about it, years before this, but it wasn't until maybe late 2021 that I really started paying attention. And also in grad school, got into this because of DeSci originally, decentralized science, and that just led me down the rabbit hole of the world computer and consensus and having a shared source of truth and all the stuff that has kept me here a few years later. Um, so I guess, I mean, you've maybe answered this question already, like how you got into this originally, but how about what has sort of stopped you from, I don't know, getting distracted or drawn into other ecosystems? Like you've stayed within Ethereum, it sounds like, for a long time now. Um, have you ever been tempted to work on a different blockchain?
No, not even
No.
slightly, not at any point. And the reason why it's very simple, right? And like we can get into this and walk through the fundamentals, but it's kind of like why this title is the title that it is, right? Um, I'm kind of I fell in love with that idea of the world machine that no one could stop, no one could control, no one could censor, like total immutability. And after Ethereum kind of pioneered the idea of like, look, here is general purpose compute secured by all the wonderful decentralized properties that blockchains can offer, we saw many other copycat networks, right? Like right from the get-go, we had like Tron, and then everyone remembers EOS, and now now there's a proliferation of Alt L1 block space. I've never been tempted by any of it because I have never seen any that I feel actually have more fundamental security and strength than Ethereum. And up until the merge, I was willing to give it to Bitcoin at least that like, yeah, maybe you have better economic security because of the huge hash rate for your one specific value as store of value. But no, after the merge, switching to proof of stake, Ethereum with effective client diversity, geographic distribution of validators, all the wonderful things that the network is, really trying to like take the hard way to build these things properly before like saying like, okay, now we can just crank it and scale and make this like VC fast chain number 12. Um, there's nothing else. There's nothing else like it. And there's nothing else taking that fundamental approach.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you 100%. Maybe a good place to sort of like backtrack to is something you said at the beginning there, right? Which is you said there's all these, alt L1s that are basically selling block space, right? So like at the most core basic level, if we talk about Ethereum and what it offers people, what would you say? Like I have an answer in mind for myself, but I'd love to hear your take. Like what is the thing that Ethereum provides that is the best form of, what other competitors may try to provide?
Yeah, I'm going to rip this straight from Josh Stark, right? I quoted it in the Milady zine, and it's the highest quality block space at the lowest possible price, right? That's really
Mhm.
it. Like people think like block space is block space is block space. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily true, right? Like Ethereum does have all these wonderful properties that set it apart. And that's what we mean by quality, right? And some of those qualities you can differentiate them by like the hardness of the block space, right? This huge economic security, the censorship resistance. We're only going to make that stronger, right? Like FOCIL is considered for a headliner in Glamsterdam. We're going to continue trying to maintain the effective client diversity. More and more clients are going to come online. No other network is really optimized for these or throwing serious money or weight behind doing this. Um, and then lowest possible prices, right? Like we admit Ethereum L1 is more expensive than many of these Alt L1s. And you just can't make this free because, the validators have to do things. There are like the gas schedule exists for a reason, right? To prevent denial of service.
Yep.
But there's always work going there to try and make this as cheap as possible. A lot of
Yep.
initiatives like blobs, right? Trying to just add more, get more throughput, make them more optimized, make them cheaper. So that's really what I think Ethereum is and what it boils down to. It's like its core business of the world computer side.
Mhm.
And then separately, Ether is money. It is a store of value. It does have properties in DeFi as like this pristine sovereign asset native to this wonderful network that it rests on top of. So I'm also not one of these people that thinks like Ethereum has to pick one or the other, right? Like I think world computer is just it's the best one out there, and of course Ethereum the network is always going to be around and it's always going to get better and better. But of course Ether is like the pristine gem on top of that hill. So
Oh man, too many good things to just be like, yes, like
oh,
so
I
many
know we
gems in
picked that
there.
part.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
we came out really strong with this. Like, let's lay it down all the things. I'm like, oh, what should I even come back to and like address? I mean, actually, so you started off by mentioning FOCIL for choice inclusion
Yep.
lists. Um, and Glamsterdam. So Glamsterdam is the next upgrade that's planned for Ethereum. People listening to this
After
probably
Fusaka.
after Fusaka. Okay, so there's Fusaka and then Glamsterdam. Yeah, so I mean, like, even later on, you said something like Ethereum's going to be here a long time. I've been on this a little bit the last couple of days, but my 2005 Corolla, and I have a lot of tweets planned for the
I did
parallels
see that one.
between
Yeah,
between Ethereum and my '05 Corolla. The first that they'll both be around long after I'm gone. You talk about client diversity. I mean, so people again listening probably are aware that Ethereum has had like 16 major upgrades since starting a decade ago with no downtime, which is like amazing. Client diversity is something that is continuing. I mean, the folks that we work with at Lambda class are working on their own Rust execution client right now called Ethrex. It seems like there's a lot of people who are focused on this, but it is really something that, like, Ethereum is a network that in theory could be around for a very, very long time, and maybe aside from Bitcoin will probably be the blockchain, public blockchain network that will be. Why is FOCIL so important for this whole, I don't know, 1,000-year Ethereum roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, obviously it's not a deal breaker. We don't have it right now. The network is still the best in the world. It's working great. FOCIL is really a response to what we saw with the fact that builder centralization is just naturally happening, right? Like validators who use MEV-boost or people who don't build locally. We have centralized parties who can construct better blocks faster. And this is just naturally going to be the progression, right? As Ethereum kind of focuses, especially when we look at like the ZK endgame that we're trying to push for, where the decentralization is being more decoupled from the rest of the network, right? And so we're going to make sure we have home validators running their clients who are attesting to the correctness of the network. They're verifying that everything is going on. But we're also going to lean into the benefits of centralization where it is safe. And so having centralized block builders is not a problem for Ethereum if they don't censor. And so this is the problem that we saw with Tornado Cash having been hit by the OFAC sanctions, where many of the centralized builders did begin censoring. And fortunately,
Hmm.
there's a wonderful website called Inclusion Watch, where you can tune all these different parameters, and you can say, like, if X% of the network is censoring, how long does it take to land this transaction? And so for Ethereum, with the OFAC sanctioning of Tornado Cash, even Tornado Cash never stopped. It worked just fine because there were sufficient home builders or local builders or non-censoring builders who would still
Hmm.
include Tornado Cash transactions relatively promptly. But there were delays, right? There was some latency introduced on top of Tornado Cash transactions. And so FOCIL is a response to this, where basically it says, like, even though we may have centralized block builders, we can have the very decentralized proposers. And in some models of FOCIL, you can even have like two-tier staking, where you could have lightweight stakers who only do FOCIL duties. And
Okay.
basically, you can have a much greater decentralized pool of people who, without having to do all the hardware work or have beefy state like the builders do, can constrain the builders by forcing them to include transactions. And so it's
Okay.
just a nice one. Like
Yeah, this
it's
is
very
sort of,
popular. Yeah.
it's an extension of like a tester proposer separation, right? Is that, am I thinking of the same thing?
You might be thinking of
Or like,
Enshrined PBS, or
maybe I'm
now
thinking
that
of
you
Trend
mentioned name,
PBS.
ePBS. It
There's,
used to be Enshrined. I think it's now it's I forget. They changed what the E stands for recently, but that one might be in Glamsterdam as well. It's sort of like up
okay.
there. Like FOCIL isn't picked for Glamsterdam. I should clarify. They're selecting headliners right now, and so if you are very strongly in favor of one EIP or another, you can go to the discussions right now and weigh in and make your voice heard. But yeah, it's FOCIL's like a big contender. ePBS also is. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah.
But the point is ultimately to make the network more decentralized, more censorship resistant, and overall more secure for anyone who wants to use this block space, right?
Yeah, exactly. FOCIL would make it very, very different if we ever had builders try to censor like they did with Tornado Cash. They
Hmm.
would be very constrained in their actions.
And I think that's a good thing because
Yeah, oh,
this is a
absolutely.
public network, right? And we we want it to be fast, but it has to be secure. It has to be permissionless. And I think that's what it's all about. You also mentioned, like, the EIPs and the whole process. I know personally something like I getting into crypto like 3 years ago. Ethereum is where I started, and I met a lot of really great people within Ethereum specifically. And there's just so much to learn and do within Ethereum that I've never felt tempted, or there's just, I have had no time to look at other other ecosystems.
Right.
But it's also the culture and like this. Some people may like to talk shit and talk about the research culture being too academic or like, you know, not product and engineering focused enough. It feels like that's changing, at least recently. There's been more focus on that. But I personally, I mean, I'm a scientist. I love research and discussing and debating these ideas. So things like the Ethereum magicians, or the whole EIP public forum discussion process, I love it. I haven't spent enough time on there myself, but it's like literally anybody who wants to help steward the protocol and contribute to it can, right? It's like open. It's not being run by some foundation. Not the same way that other projects might be
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly. There's not. Well, I mean, the Ethereum Foundation is not like a. I mean, let's just call it as is. The Ethereum Foundation is a real foundation. It's not like a cover for some Ethereum labs in
Yeah.
a trench coat that's actually running like a company and using the foundation to dump tokens. And it's very transparent, right? Like just
Hmm.
from even the financials fully disclosed. We know the EF's holdings. They do transparency reports. They're getting much better about being transparent, right? They're listening to community calls for action with the whole publishing the org chart, talking about these new initiatives. Just yesterday, they announced the whole protocol
Yeah.
shakeup that they're going for.
Yeah. The new
Um,
organization reorg.
yeah, before that, they redid the all core devs process, and we're very transparent about how they're changing that. So yeah, no, it's just a lot building in the open, and that's before Ethereum, I was in more of the generalized like free software movement, from good old RMS, but it's the same culture, right? It's a lot of like
Hmm.
just do things transparently, do things open, and it makes it hard to be dishonest, which is what's very nice about Ethereum, right? Like we people say like Ethereum hits all the hard problems first because it's like the biggest network. Well, I think we hit the hard problems first because like we're also aware of them and we don't hide them. We don't pretend that they're not hard problems,
Hmm.
right? Like we're not going to rebrand Mev into Rev and pretend it's a good thing. Like Mev is a bad thing. We try to minimize this. We talk about like the perils of Mev boost, right? And like everyone's very transparent about all the problems that came with this. And so yeah, no, I think I just love that part of Ethereum culture. It's very genuine.
Yeah. 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 No, I'm totally with you on that. Um, I like that idea of hitting the hard problems first and like not beating around the bush. Like, I don't know. I have maybe mixed takes on the idea of progressive decentralization. Like, I understand the importance of bringing a product to market and why doing something in a so-called centralized way can be more efficient. But at the same time, it's like a Faustian bargain, you know?
Oh, it's absolutely a one-way street,
Yeah.
right? Like even now, the kind of the what I think is going to be the next like block size war or like
Mm,
bandwidth war. As we move into the ZKN game, it's going to be what are the requirements for this prover? Because the way that works is, if we turn Ethereum into a ZK rollup on top of itself, we only need one honest prover in the entire world to prove Ethereum.
mhm.
And we see like Succinct recently, they ran a little demo. They're proving the vast majority of Ethereum blocks in real time. Their cluster uses like 80 kilowatts of energy to do that. And so there's a lot of debates about like, well, what is that kilowatt number? And I think that's our next thing, right? Because like, sure, it's cool, like 100 kilowatts. That's like 160 GPUs. Like, just remember what we were doing in proof of work days. We could totally get a community together with 160 GPUs. Like, I have a portion of that in my closet right now, right? But if we're saying like, well, now it's like a megawatt or 10 megawatts, right? That's where we're starting to say like that would be bad. And there are some people in Ethereum who are like, let's just do it right now. Like, let's just rip the band-aid off, go with like the giant megawatt prover, crank the
Yeah.
chain, do the ZK endgame, and then we will lower it as the tech gets better. And that's where I think like that's what the way I see like the progressive decentralization. You never want to you're never the temptation is always there to just say like, well, instead of maintaining what we have and lowering the costs, let's
Let's
maintain
push.
the
Yeah.
costs and just scale even more, right? And so,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I
No,
agree.
I'm fully like, I think decentralization is important. I mean, I would like to run my own home validator one day and contribute that way. I don't have enough ETH to, to run my own validator yet, but
Squad
it would
stake.
be yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there's that, but I do think it's important to be able to have a lot of, like there's over 1 million Ethereum nodes right now, I believe, right? Um
I have no idea
Last I
what the
checked. Yeah,
status. Yeah.
I think there's something ridiculous like that. But I mean, I guess there's with the latest update in Pectra, now they increase the staking limit. So I guess the argument is it doesn't really change the amount of decentralization. It actually makes it more like honest. Like if somebody is right now running 10 validators, but it's really one person controlling those, now they can reduce their infra costs and run one validator with all of that ETH. And it's
Yeah, I
still
mean,
as decentralized,
right, right. It's a great
fewer
update. I,
boxes.
I was a big fan of the max effective balance change, right? Because it's good. It reduces, just allowing validators to consolidate, right? Like you said, it doesn't change anything about the decentralization properties whatsoever.
Mhm.
Like whether they were running like 100 validators, now they consolidate that down into less. It's just great for the network health, right? Less signatures to aggregate.
Mhm.
less overhead for doing
Yep.
consensus, and it makes it more capital efficient because now you don't have to do it in strictly chunks of 32, right? So kind of a
Hmm.
win-win-win. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying, right? Like I think there was if Ethereum were more concerned with optics and playing nothing except games like that, well, then they would have said like, well, no, the 32 limit's great. We have all these nodes, and you can pretend like they're not the same people behind most of them, right? And so
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
this extends all the way. Like I'm sure you've seen the whole staking dashboards, right? And the community cries when it was like very important to keep Lido below 33%.
Hmm.
And yeah, like Ethereum, we're just very concerned about staking health in that way.
Yeah. No, that's good. And see, if Ethereum was, if the royal Ethereum, if the whole community really only cared about optics, then I think there's a lot of people who probably wouldn't be working on it for as long as they have so far and continue to be working on it. So, it's a solid trade-off in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah. So, we were talking about scaling a little bit, which maybe is a good time to talk about rollups. You know, eh, I'm guessing you think that the rollup-centric roadmap has been a good thing, based on, like, in theory, it's a good thing, but I know you have some issues with how it's maybe been executed. I want to start by saying, like, when I was first getting into crypto, I didn't know what a rollup was. I think it was around the time Arbitrum launched. I went to ETH Denver in 2022, and Arbitrum was sponsoring a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what Arbitrum is, but if I can get free food truck tokens, then I'll add
Right.
this network to my MetaMask. So let's go. Um, and yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm curious what you think about how the whole idea started to where we are now, um, and maybe why the EF, if you have any idea about this, like why the EF never launched their own rollup as like a proof of concept. Um, was that a conversation at the time? Maybe I'm jumping the gun. Just yeah.
Yeah. So the rollup-centric roadmap, big fan. Because in principle, right, if you remember what we were trying to do before that is sharding, which was, breaking the network up. We do verifiable chunks of work on different portions of Ethereum, and then everyone can live happily ever after. There's a lot of complexity involved in that, and it's very rigid in the way that I think people were realizing that L2s are going to happen anyways, no matter what, because you can't really ever stop an L2 from existing on a chain, right? At the end of the day, an L2 is just a smart contract. And if you're a general purpose chain, then people will write that smart contract and they can do an off-chain simulation of Ethereum or any other network and wrap it all up and prove it to Ethereum. And that's why it's a secure extension of all of our security. But the problem is, like, we've been absolutely let down by every single corporate interest who has been building these things. So the rollup-centric roadmap is just great. It basically says like, hey, instead of doing sharding, we can focus on Ethereum in other aspects. We can make the merge easier to pull off. We can do all these wonderful things, and we'll provide things like blob space that make rollups much more useful, much more effective. I think the community lost its way quite a lot in terms of not demanding more from our rollups.
Hmm.
And it was that progressive decentralization thing that you mentioned earlier, right? Optimism and Arbitrum, when they launched and people are onboarding TVL and they're sponsoring ETH Denver, and people are, yeah, sure, I'll stick my ETH there. They weren't necessarily aware that there is zero security property of this that differentiates it from a centralized exchange. It's complete trust me. And for many, many years of operation, neither Arbitrum nor Optimism nor any of the other rollups even had working proof systems, right? In fact, one of the only actual L2s that did anything meaningful in this regard were like the payment only L2s that never saw much adoption and DYDX v3, which people used, people loved, and then they shut it down, but it was a real decentralized app chain.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's really like the problem with the rollups, in my opinion, right? They just, and then of course everyone starts launching rollups and no one cares about making sure that they're actually properly inheriting any Ethereum
Yeah.
security. And to this day, there's not a single general purpose L2 with an exit window. And I think that's despicable. Now, as to why the Ethereum,
Despicable. I
it's
like that.
despicable. It's just like I
Yeah.
genuinely, and I've said this to people, I've said this to other L2 founders and teams, and I've been very militant about it. I think it's unethical. I think what the rollups are doing to onboard all this capital without having an exit window is just actively like not in the spirit of anything that crypto should be doing. There should not be a million ether on base secured only by a multi-sig that can be compromised right now and all be stolen instantaneously with nothing that the users can do. And I'm not asking for much. I'm asking for an exit window, which is the bare minimum. Like put that upgrade behind the time lock. And then there you go. If we see that you're evil, the users have 30 days to escape. And that's the
Hmm.
L2 beat one of their requirements for being stage 2.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, it got to the point where I was between jobs at one point, and I wanted to say like, okay, I'm going to go build an application. I need to pick an L2 to build on, and I care about all this trustlessness, and I go to L2 beat. So shout out to those guys, fantastic research, and I do all my homework, and I'm so disappointed that there's not a single solution out there. And so yeah, I basically started a year ago to make my own, and we're not launching unless we have that exit window. And I'm very confident that I've made it as good as it can be. And it's nice to be kind of free of a lot of the giant corporatist constraints because I'm building this roll up for me. I'm building this roll up for people like me. And if I'm the only user ever, then so be it, right? I have my roll up that I wanted. And
Yeah.
I didn't think I would be even close to first, but I started that a year ago. Here I am a year later, like I'm almost ready to launch. There's still no exit window on any of the other L2s. And I'm just saying the world should be embarrassed if I'm the first guy to get there because I did this with 2 fistfuls of peanuts and 1 engineer, right? So we're having a good time in roll up
That's
land.
yeah, man. Okay, well, yeah. So I gotta ask you directly about Sigil, the roll up with an exit window that you have been building for the past year. Um, you've already talked about why an exit window is important if you care about decentralization and censorship resistance, and the roll up you're deploying on not rugging you. Um, yeah, I mean, beyond what you've already said, what else? What else can you share about Sigil? Because I've been following it for a while, and it's been a little bit mysterious. I mean, I love the branding. I love the, the
I mean, yeah, we
esoteric
haven't focused on
vibe.
any. We don't even have a website yet. I'm not communicating anything really. Like I have a Discord server full of interested people who I'm collecting, and we're basically running internal tests. We did our first test of an exit window, like an actual test, right? I spun up a test net. I gave all of my documentation to a friend who's another smart contract developer but doesn't know anything about L2s, and I shut all the infrastructure down. And I'm like, okay, cool. Are you able to get your ETH off? And it took him a few days, but he did it. And he left me a bunch of notes. And he's like, that was horrible. Your instructions sucked. You need to make this easier. So right now we're collecting people and we're going to do another test after we fix all the feedback that we got. And we're going to make it as simple as we can. And
Okay.
then yeah, we're just gonna see, and we're just gonna progressively do this. And what my whole point is like, I am not gonna do a mainnet unless I know that my community can escape. If anything
Hmm.
happens to me, if I turn evil, if I get shoved in the back of a van, beaten with a rubber hose until I give up the keys, like their ether will be safe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I just think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I think you're onto something there for sure. Um, So in terms of like the rollups architecture, like how could somebody participate? Will there be like different nodes people could run for Sigil? Is the sequencer like a centralized sequencer, decentralized with a bunch of participants? Like,
Yeah,
have
so
you
we're
had to make trade-offs in terms of making sure there's an exit window versus other, I don't know, performance-related architectural decisions? Um,
Yeah, I mean, we do stand on the shoulder of giants, right? Like I would be amiss. I could not build this in a year if Optimism did not already build the op stack. And so as much as I can make fun of Optimism and say you guys are unethical and you should have exit windows, they did build everything that I rely on. I still
mhm.
think they should have exit windows. I still think, why are you building this crap for me instead of putting it on your own chain? But that's neither here nor there. I'm sure there are wonderful marketing and business reasons that make them afraid to use a time lock. But nah, so we're pretty much just a very vanilla like op stack chain when we launch. We're not doing anything special.
Mhm.
People can run nodes for Sigil. I heavily encourage it. I'm going to make it very easy. But that's just more so that people can access the chain like themselves in a censorship resistant way and
Yeah.
maintain their own state. The beauty of an exit window is no one has to run anything at all until they need it. So like
Mm.
you can just look at the L2 and just trust it. And if I turn evil, you'll have 45 days notice to say, oh shit, like he's evil, and then you can figure out how to run this, and it takes like a day to set up and sync, and then you can submit your own proof, and you're good to go. So that's also a nice thing of L2s, right? And this is why, like, just to circle way back to why I think the rollup-centric roadmap is actually good. L2s are great. Like, they can be very centralized and still be safe and still inherit Ethereum security, right? So in normal happy operation, I can be the sole centralized sequencer. I'm doing everything. You just tell me the transaction. Cool. I prove it. I send it back down. And if I have all these safeguards like exit windows, then you don't have to bother as a user doing like anything to run your own node to actually be decentralized unless you think you need to, unless you see that I am doing something malicious and you want to escape. And I just think that's great because, like, you can have, if they any of them were real, if they had exit windows, and like, yes, it is a good thing that we have rollups like Arbitrum and Base as fast as they are, as cheap as they are, challenging all the other Alto ones. So
Yeah, cool. So I see you're also talking about a general purpose rollup here, right? Like the idea would be, there will be DeFi on here, anything people would want to build on Ethereum, but on a rollup, lower cost, more throughput
yeah, exactly right. It's a smart contract. You can just
platform.
deploy it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's Ethereum,
yeah. It's
but on an
Ethereum.
L2. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
It has some small changes, but nothing that I think would matter, or nothing that would stop you from writing smart contracts.
hmm Well, you said that you started down this journey when you were looking for an L2 to build an app on, somewhere to a home for the app you wanted to build.
Yes.
I'm dying to know what app did you want to build? Did you still want to build it? Is it a secret?
I still want to build it. Yeah. I wanted to build ZK voting for my local library on chain, which is
That's
like
awesome.
stupid. Like, now I could just do it on L1, right? I'm like a better. I could totally just aggregate signatures and verify it. But I had this notion I wanted to put it on L2, make it all pretty, just have everyone transact. I just wanted to like onboard people to
hmm
Ethereum in a way that's fun. But
And then you
I
started.
refuse to do it. I refuse to do it on
Yeah.
unsafe block space. That's really it. Like,
hmm
I will not put my whole ZK voting thing. Oh, it's all wonderful. Here it is. It's running on like Scroll. Let's pick on Scroll for no reason. It's running there, and like, oh yay, cool. They do their proof and they submit it back down to Ethereum, and there's the state root. And I'm like, cool. I verify it's all correct. I've been secured. I've inherited the blessings of the world machine. And then they upgrade it and they set it to all zeros, and it's gone and obliterated and wiped away forever instantaneously before I can migrate. And I'm like, oh, all right.
Oof. Yeah.
And that's how it is every single roll up today. And I'm a crazy person for pointing this out, but no, I
See
lost
that?
faith completely. I lost faith. Before I built a roll up, I went on a crusade. I went on a little exploratory mission before I decided to be this crazy motherfucker. I went to East Denver. I went to every single roll-ups booth. I asked them for in-person questions about this. I went to multiple of the governance forums, made posts asking like, when do you decentralize, like when time lock.
hmm One
Very
time lock.
very dissatisfied with every single answer I received. Figured I had to do it myself. So
Wow, that's a beautiful story. I mean, everything you just said though about like the potential risk of deploying this voting protocol. I mean, that's when I think about Ethereum and blockchains. I think about the unstoppability of it and the idea that this data you put there, maybe it's not financial data, maybe it's voting data, maybe it's an identity protocol. The idea is that it'll be there in perpetuity, and that's why you don't want just like a database, right?
right.
And anybody can verify that it hasn't been tampered with. It follows all the same rules. It's like it is what it is. And I don't think you're a crazy person for saying this. It's just kind of interesting to think that you have a level of understanding, like the depth of your understanding is very deep in this domain, and there's probably a small-ish number of people in the world who have the experience and the I don't know the knowledge to have such a strong opinion, right? And a lot of them are probably working on rollups. um,
Probably.
yeah, yeah. Like some of them are maybe EF core devs, but a lot of people who have thought about these problems and trade-offs to the same extent that you have are probably working in these companies, right? Just kind of interesting to think about. I don't know the incentives there, and yeah,
Yeah, I mean, C Note has a really funny hot take on this, which is like looking at the budget of every single roll up over time. over the last 2 years and being like, man, I sure believe all those engineers have been working diligently on exit windows the whole time. And it's a fair criticism, right? It's like, why do we prioritize making rollups faster and faster and faster and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper instead of making them
Hmm.
theoretically safe to use, right? One of these
Yeah,
seems more fundamental. Right, I would love to make Sigil fast eventually, but like when we launch, it's not. I don't give a shit. It's not going to be the fastest roll up in the world. It's not going to be the cheapest roll up in the world, but it'll have an exit window. I don't even
yeah,
think I'll be first to have an exit window, but come along for the ride because we're the people building it, and this is our ethos, right?
yeah.
So
And
that's sort of what we're trying to tell the world.
I'm glad you're pushing the other teams towards that with what you're doing because
Oh, I
yeah, I
don't
mean
think they
like
listen to me at all. I don't think I'm pushing anyone.
well, at least you're getting the conversation going.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's like even me, like as I've dug deeper into rollups, like I don't have a significant amount of on-chain funds, but whatever bit of savings I have, maybe stables and lending protocols, collecting some nice yield that's better than my bank. It's like I keep it on L1 at this point because I've come to realize that yeah, I could get rugged by an L2, and maybe it won't happen, but a lot of people also trusted FTX and you know
Right.
like we tell people not your keys, not your coins, but then that kind of extends to the network you're keeping your assets on, because
Yeah.
somebody
Oh,
does have the
exactly.
keys to the network.
Exactly. And fundamentally, really what I want is like, just to get serious, I want to hold L2s to the same standards that we hold every other fucking smart contract in the entire ecosystem, right?
Hmm.
Like, you can look back at even before OpenSea was Seaport, they were still Weaver and DAO using like those contracts, different project, different contracts that got absorbed, turned into OpenSea. But from inception, right, this thing had time locks on all the upgrades, and then they carried that forward in the Seaport, right? Like they can't rug your NFT listing on Seaport. And you think about this, and it's like, well, that's really, in the grand scheme of things, like OpenSea cares about this more than $15 billion of TVL on some of these chains, right? And
Wild. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know. It's at the end of the day, it's just an engineering problem,
Hmm.
and I know it's a hard engineering problem, but you also have billions of dollars in
Yeah.
5 years to fix it, right? It's like I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure we could have done it by now. That's my take.
No, it's a good one. I mean, something I discussed with Luca from L2 Beat when I had him on here, maybe like a month or two ago. Um, he sort of noted that it's kind of cool that in a way Ethereum is kind of sort of like what's the word I'm looking for? You know, not offloaded, but externalized the scaling roadmap. Using VC money, getting all, creating the right incentives for people to launch rollups, which has accelerated a lot of the research. ZKVMs,
Yes.
all kinds of stuff. And maybe in the long run, Ethereum itself kind of enshrines a lot of this technology and and like eats its children. But right now it seems
Oh,
like
I
a,
agree. I
a
agree. It should eat
mutually
those
beneficial
children.
relationship.
Well, they're parasites because they don't have exit windows yet. Right. I mean, it's like someday you will, and then you can be extensions. You can be children. Right now, they're bastards. Um, but no, I agree. That's like a big reason why I think it was such a strategic success. Even though strategic success, tactical failure because of corporate greed, not doing the right thing. But
Mhm.
strategically, Ethereum probably headed off a lot of alt L1s that people would have built otherwise. Now they're L2s, and now they get to use ETH, and they do extend the moneyness property of Ethereum by doing that. Tons of innovation, right? Like ZK technology, huge. Like greatest victory of Ethereum's life, I think. Like the sheer amount of investment and research from the EF and from the community into scaling that and improving that. Like I'm flabbergasted that it actually has gotten like 10 times faster year over year for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
We're living in like pipe dream territory that like, it's still kind of unbelievable. And I talked to some people, I'm sure you know Porter from ZK Sync,
Yeah, yeah.
and he's like even more bullish on how this technology scales than I am. And so future's very bright there.
Yeah, I've been convinced of this as well. I mean, I've only been really involved in ZK for a year, and actually, maybe 2 years ago, I was at Zuzalu, and that's when I first got exposed to ZK. That old ZK track, I had no idea what any of this was, but I met Porter there, and yeah, I was like trying to wrap my head around all of this, and then it eventually clicked. Like, oh, this is how you can scale blockchains. ZK lets you do this, and there's all the privacy stuff, which is a whole other topic that we could probably discuss for a long time. But
oh yeah, no, it's interesting.
yeah,
It's underused, and I'm guilty of this too, right? So like Sigil is a ZK rollup, but we're not. We're a validity rollup. Like I almost feel like it's
mm-hmm.
stolen valor to say it's a ZK rollup because I'm not introducing any privacy whatsoever. Like I'm only using it for the succinctness properties. Yeah. But Aztec is going to use it for privacy and might launch. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, they have a test net now, so that's
right. Yeah,
that's really good.
Mainnet with exit window, I'll be their best friends, right? I like Aztec.
that's yeah. Exit windows. It's all about exit windows.
And that's the bare minimum, right? And this is like as much as I like to go on, bother Tom with his little unstoppable rollup thing. He's totally correct that an exit window has tons of flaws. And so anyone who hasn't watched it, you can go watch the last unstoppable rollup call. There's a lot of good content in there. But they are like the bare minimum to be totally safe, totally inherit Ethereum security for certain classes of application with certain degrees of user action required. And I see them as it's a low bar, but I see it as a good stepping stone towards like full ossification of a rollup, which would be ideal, right? Just like the rollup's done, it's immutable. We can't upgrade it anymore. You can go use it safely, and no one can ever rug you.
So. Ethereum equivalent shard, basically, that is as secure as it can be.
Which is funny because like no one wants to do this because Ethereum itself is upgrading. So it's like you'll fall behind. You'll be like a legacy, right? Like someday Ethereum will be like RISC 5 on the native L1, and you'll still be like this old EVM thing that got frozen in time in 2025.
That nobody can work on anymore. We lost the technology.
Yeah, but like that's still fine. That's still fine because like Uniswap does this. Like V1 is a thing, and then V2 is a thing. V3, V4. You can just have silos. And I know Luca is a big fan of that idea. So.
Yeah. So okay, I don't want to keep you too long, but we've been talking about exit windows. I'm curious, what is like if an exit window is the bare minimum, it's like the bar that needs to be overcome. What else should a rollup have? What's like the second and third items on the list after an exit window to make like a good rollup? A rollup that you would use rather.
Yeah, no, I mean it's would I use a good rollup? That's what is good. No, I mean L2B has really good criteria on this. They have like the self-sequencing, censorship resistance, all that. Now all of those end up kind of combining to make exit windows. So if you have an exit window, you have some mechanism for doing all of those. There are better mechanisms than like the dumbest naive form that like I am implementing for some of these, but it all works if you get there. Ways to make a rollup better. The gold standard is something like Aztec Pay or like Fuel V1, where it's frozen in time, it's done, like it's not upgradable. Then you have an infinity day exit window, and you can actually use it for a lot of stuff that you might use on Ethereum. I would say ZK rollups are just better. Zero knowledge mechanisms are just better than optimistic ones because you can have faster finality, right? Like you don't have to wait for a whole fraud game to play out. You don't have to watch the roll up like a hawk with the ZK mechanism to see if someone has proposed something invalid and challenge it. You can just see like, did a proof appear, yes or no? Those are some of like the next steps and improvements. And of course, like the whole thing has to be based on like free software, right? Like this has to be open source. So like Arbitrum sucks in that regard because everything they have is like under BUSL. And that's why like the op stack I think has seen more adoption, and it's just like people are building with optimism stuff and not with Arbitrum stuff because optimism made it open, right? Like the crypto space kind of naturally rewards building in the open. And so those are like my not bare minimum requirements of an L2, but
I love it. No, this is all really good. I mean, like I'm keeping notes. This is something that's very relevant to the work that we're doing. We're developing a ZK rollup stack as well, and it's a stack that we want governments and institutions and entities that care about security a lot to be able to use this and to see the value in it, right? So everything you're saying is like, I'm taking notes. This is all like,
yeah, we're very aligned.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that got me into this whole space originally got me really excited was the idea of DAOs. And I even worked at Gitcoin for a little while, and like I still really love the idea, but then I think about, I don't know, a major company with a lot of assets, like living on chain as some sort of internet native company, right? And if you want external parties to be able to trust that your company is running properly and that the, I don't know, equity they have in it or something, if it's all on chain, um, can't be locked down. Like, you need all of these features to have like a real like interoperable, open, forever kind of machine for your company to live on chain. So a lot of stuff for me to think about. Yeah. So Tim, I don't want to keep you too long. I mean, I feel like I could start asking about Milady's and Ethereum culture. Maybe we can close on that because I think
We
that's
can
fun.
close. We can talk about the Miladies. Shout out to the
Yeah.
Miladies. No, it's really fun. Like I have given some good posts about what Milady. I mean, what Milady means to me, right? It means a lot. Um, I discovered it kind of at that same time where I started becoming more active. Like, actually made a Twitter account, and, like, came online and started using crypto Twitter. And it was like
Mhm,
after FTX blew up and figuring out, like, okay, who's left? Who are the survivors? Let's make some friends. And I found them, like, very unique among NFTs, where they were pushing, like, the viral public license, and, like, no, you don't own this IP. The IP is owned by the world, right? And it's just that culture of, like, very very free association, very, like, there's no guilt by association. Obviously, like, that leads to a lot of, like, the edgy stuff in Blade that people know about, but, like, that's not the point. Like, it's not a magical brain slug that possesses you and turns you into, like, whatever you think a monster is, right? You can have nuance. You can just talk to people. You can just say things, and that's sort of the freedom there. And cultural credible neutrality is sort of like one thing that got thrown around,
mhm,
which is why I think it was a great fit for Ethereum. One of the, if not the only, NFT company on Ethereum that never abandoned Ethereum when the price was low. It didn't start launching derivatives itself on, like, they never did like a Bitcoin ordinal thing. There was never like
mhm.
oh, the token isn't on Solana for some fucking reason, so very aligned, very natural fit. And I think that's why you know I think there's a reason why there are Miladies in the Ethereum Foundation. So
Yeah, yeah. I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat right now just going Milady, which is awesome. A total side note, but I just remember this last weekend on the door to an underground parking garage in Toronto. People throw parties down there sometimes. I found a Milady sticker and I got a photo of this. I'm like, was there a Milady rave here? But I was just kind of surprised to see this like purely in the wild.
oh, these
Um,
stickers, the stickers get
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah. It's like this one. I don't know if you can even see this on my camera.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh wow, nice. There is no meme. I love you." I'm like, thanks seeing you here. Um, but yeah, Tim, this has been great. I want to before we actually close off, like I want to get like a sound bite. If in maybe I don't know 3 sentences or so, you could describe why Ethereum, like in as few words as possible. Why Ethereum?
If you actually care about what we're doing here in crypto and you want to build applications that are unstoppable, that will last forever, that will outlive you, that will outlive all of us, that will outlive the planet Earth, that will move forward into the galaxy under just infinite intelligence, you need to pick Ethereum, because we're the only ones that are building with that 1,000-year dynasty mindset. It's the only one with any of the clients. It's the only one doing anything correctly. It's the only one with the decentralization of validators. It's the only one taking the hard road. And that's ultimately the fundamental road you have to take.
That was
Right.
beautiful.
Yeah, a little too poetic there. We'll see.
No, no, not at all. I'm happy you went a little poetic. This is great. That's gonna make a great clip to put on YouTube and Twitter and everywhere else. But yeah, so Tim, dude, thank you. This was awesome. I'm excited
Oh,
to
thank
chat
you.
some more in the future, but also I don't want to keep you all day. I mean, I do, but I'm not going to.
Nah, we have
Um,
jobs. I got to roll up to build.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Those exit windows are not going to build themselves. But yeah, man, thank you again for coming on. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. I hope this is great. There's a full recording you'll be able to share later on. Um, and yeah, keep on believing, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Thank you, Boris.
Bye bye.